VIGILANT Broadcasting, the station of opportunity, presents The Chronicles of Doing Too Much with your host, Angel Riley.
Hello, and good evening, and welcome to tonight's episode of the Chronicles of Doing Too Much. I'm your host, the one and only Angel Riley, and I'm so happy that all of you guys are tuned in tonight so we can have another fantastic discussion. Now, if you've been following along, we kicked off this series of where we talked about knowing when it's time to make a power move. And now we went right into setting the vision, making it plain and clear, and the vision statement pretty much being forward-looking. And what we're talking about is not only applicable to business, it's also applicable to what you're doing in your personal life. So everything that we're discussing in this series of topics is designed to make sure that it's setting you up to live the best life possible. If that best life looks like entrepreneurship, if that best life looks like, just doing something that you've been dying to do forever, that's all that matters. We just want to give you the most effective tools to help you to get there. All right, so we got that vision. It's plain and clear. Then we went on to the mission statement. The mission statement is the who, what, why, and how, pretty much. The who, what, why, and how. How are you going to achieve that vision, that forward-looking, where you're trying to go? And we did a lot of examples there. So now let's get into more of the meat and potatoes. And tonight's episode is going to be really, really important to kind of go through and lay it out. And just as a reminder, these concepts that we're going over, these topics that we're reviewing, they all are actually the basis of your business plan. So if you're a new business or a experienced business and you don't have a business plan, listen to all of these episodes of the Chronicles, because this is going to really help you to set yourself up for success. I'm going to have to pull the statistics, but I took a class at the Small Business College at Texas Wesleyan University. It's a workshop, small business workshop with their business school. And there was a statistic, and I'm going to have to pull that statistic to report it to you guys, that talked about, I think it was in the 30s, but I don't want to misquote. But it was basically saying over 70% of businesses fail because they don't have a business plan. So these very essential and basic steps that we're going through right now is basically helping you to define that plan. So it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to, have large words, as I say, the big scholarly words. This is just to help you move along, because if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So when we're making power moves and we're doing really key and important things in our lives, we want to be sure that we're following a roadmap to that success. So that leads us right into where we are now, and that is the SWOT analysis. So get your pens and papers. This is going to be another opportunity for me to teach you guys about some more business savvy stuff as we're setting up our businesses and setting up, strengths in our personal lives so we can live the best life forward. But SWOT is S for strengths, W for weaknesses, O for opportunities, and T for threats. So it's called a SWOT analysis. So this is business 101. In all very basic level business classes, you'll learn about the SWOT analysis, and I think it's SWEAT with the A, where the O is transferred out for an A. I learned about this a long time ago, and I've actually been using SWOT analysis for a long time and didn't necessarily name it that. So I've done the SWOT analysis for my career. I've done the SWOT analysis for my network marketing business. I've done the SWOT analysis for the next move. I shared a lot in this broadcast about, just going through a divorce, an unexpected divorce, and, getting back out into the dating scene, and this sounds crazy, but I really did do a SWOT analysis for the dating scene to make sure that I was really ready to be able to date. What are some of the things that I bring into a relationship, and being aware of certain things about myself to be able to communicate effectively to whomever I'm dating, and just brings us about awareness. That's a good definition of a SWOT analysis. It brings about awareness. So that's why it can be applied to your business as well as to your personal life. So I am using a couple of resources tonight as I reference SWOT analysis, and that's just because I like to give you guys additional places to go to follow up. But if you just do a basic internet search for SWOT analysis, you'll get a lot of examples of how to set the grid up, which is just basically a plus sign in the middle of the page, and then it gives you 4 blocks, and you just have strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Very simple. Okay, but the SWOT analysis is a useful technique for understanding your strengths and weaknesses and for identifying both the opportunities open to you and the threats you face. So this is from, is this the Mind Tools? Yep. This definition is from Mind Tools. And Mind Tools is a great publication. Again, it's online. They give you access to 3 of their articles for free, but then there's a registration fee, like a subscription fee to it. But they have some good articles, good workbooks, and it's all types. It's not just business. There's also a lot of personal development tools there as well. So I highly recommend them. I always try to take advantage of any of the places that give you great resources for free. So this is definitely one, and you get 3 articles. So be mindful if you're not planning to invest. And they have great videos, teaching videos, and so forth. So, again, I'm not endorsed by Mind Tools, but just to give you guys an idea of how good and effective of a resource that it is. So when we look at the SWOT analysis, it's basically, in the context of business, it's a way to help you identify your niche market. It's a way to help you to kind of focus in. You hear a lot in business about who's my audience, who's my customer, who is my ideal customer, where are there opportunities for me to grow as a business. So you pretty much have to do that SWOT analysis. So a lot in my network marketing company, I talk a lot about, okay, we got to debrief things. What does our customer base look like? Identify what type of, product to present to various customers. What is the age range? What's the ethnicity? What's the geographical location? So just doing what we call a debrief or an outbrief or a SWOT analysis that helps you to really hone in all of that to figure out what's your niche market. In the personal context, it basically helps you to develop your career that it puts you in the most ideal situation to exhibit your talents, abilities, and opportunities. So remember I told you guys that I do SWOT analysis for my career, and that's a huge thing. And I didn't realize that that's what I was doing. But, 2 years ago, I trusted God. I went, and I had so much going on personally, and I went to a different state, a state that I only visited a handful of times. You guys know the story. I only visited that state. You can count on one hand how many hours. Let me rephrase that. I was in that state for less than 5 hours before the interview, and I went and I interviewed, and then I moved to this state. And then, didn't know anyone, didn't know much about this state or anything, but I said I'm going to step out on faith and trust God. And it was for a 2-year rotational assignment with no permanent position to go into at the end of that 2 years. But I did have to kind of weigh that out. A lot of us talk about, listing out the pros and cons. Well, the pros and cons is the first step as you're developing that SWOT analysis. The pros and cons is a modified version of a SWOT analysis. And, and thank God that it just worked out perfect for my career and where I am now. Okay, so let's looking at it with the business SWOT analysis. And again, I'm reading from Mind Tools, and I just love how they crafted this sentence. This first paragraph here that I want to read to you guys word from word. So this is not my direct words. This is just coming from Mind Tools. What makes SWOT particularly powerful is that with a little thought, it can help you uncover opportunities that you are well placed to exploit. And by understanding the weaknesses of your business, you can manage and eliminate threats that would otherwise catch you unaware. Isn't that powerful? That's how much power doing a basic SWOT analysis, investing this time up front in your business does. It's basically allowing you to uncover your opportunities that you are well placed to exploit. So we always talk about growth. What's next? Where are we going? How do we increase our profit? How do we increase our customer base? How do we increase our reach? How do we establish ourselves as an authority, an expert in certain areas? For my Chronicles business, that is part of what I'm doing. How do I establish myself as an authority? What opportunities are out there for me to expand the Chronicles of Doing Too Much? So by taking the time to do this simple exercise, this simple analysis, it allows me to identify all those opportunities and just go straight into it where I can just be a powerhouse and then be prepared for the threats. Okay, so that's where you got to take an honest look, an honest assessment. Now, guys, normally I print stuff out and have paper copies of my material, but today I decided to, be a little bit eco-friendly, and I'm using my electronic devices. Well, I'm so eco-friendly that my electronic devices keep going into pause screen. So if you hear me do a pause, it's just because my electronic devices are booting back up. So I do apologize for that. All right. So let's talk about a little bit, a quick tip about your SWOT analysis. And, and that's what we're talking about, the strengths and weaknesses. So your strengths and weaknesses are always going to be internal. All right. So we have the 4 categories: strength, weakness, opportunity, threat. So you're going to split those out and say what's internal and what's external. So a strength and a weakness is internal. That's you looking within. That's you doing a debrief and say, these are our strong suits, or even in your career, these are my strong suits. And then the weaknesses are, these are my challenges. I don't like the word weakness. I always say the word challenge because we are good at identifying areas that we can grow. We have that personal board of directors that we talked about in the previous episode to help us to go to that next level. So where are we when it comes to those challenges, those weaknesses? All right, and then external. The external are things that you pretty much don't have any control over. So what opportunities are out there, looking at your strengths, looking at your weaknesses? What are those opportunities that are out there to help you to meet your goal? And then the threats, what is something, what if the stock market crash? What does that do to my business? A great example is in the United States, we had the federal government employee furloughed or partial shutdown for over 30 days. What does that do to my business if my customer base is federal government employees? What does that do to my business if my customer base is not at work? What does that do to my business, or what does that do to my brand? What does that do to, whatever it is, what does it do to my career? If I'm doing a SWOT analysis for my career and perhaps I'm pursuing federal government employment. So what types of factors like that you have no control over? What is that doing to your business, or what is that doing to your career? What is that doing to whatever personal goal that you have? So when you can identify those, Then as you're building on your strengths, you build it on your weaknesses, and when we get down to laying out the marketing plan and your financials, you're able to prepare for those unexpected threats. All right? So let's go through the series of questions that when you're identifying your strengths in your SWOT analysis, these are the types of questions that you want to answer, what you want to put out there, and really to help keep you focused. Now, with SWOT analysis, when I do mine, and I try to do it annually, I always look at, especially for my network marketing business, I did it, 3 years ago when I launched my business, and then every year I just updated. And I train my team on looking at it as just their goals and always adjusting your goals. But for me, it's a true SWOT analysis where I'm looking at all 4 components and thinking about different things. And I had some threats that I didn't even think of. But fortunately, because I consistently look at the bigger picture, I was able to move my way through slowly, not perfectly. It was an imperfect move, but it worked. It worked well, and I didn't go under. I continued to grow. All right? So when you look at the strengths, you want to talk about what advantages do you have. So whether this is your business or your personal life, what are your advantages? What advantages do you have over somebody that is the same? If it's your career, what advantage do you have over the next candidate? Is it that you have a long, extensive network? Is it that, you're easy to get along with? Is it that you're a team player? But what do you consider an advantage of over the others? I felt like with my current position, when I was interviewing for my current position at my 9 to 5, one of my client groups is the organization that I left when I went to the other state. So an advantage that I had interviewing for my current position was I already knew the key players for one of my client groups. I already built the reputation. I already built the relationship. They know exactly who I was. I did not leave on bad terms. They know my work ethic. They know that I'm a woman of integrity. So that was an advantage that I had over, I don't know who my competition was, but it was an advantage that I had over the competition. So think about that. What is that advantage that you have? What sets you apart from others? All right? What do you do better than anyone else? In case you guys can't figure it out in the Chronicles, I am a very social person. I love to learn and I love to share the knowledge. So what do you do better than anyone else? I pride myself on being a good communicator. I can train, I can teach, read something and I'm ready to come and talk to you about it, teach you about it. Okay? What unique or low-cost resources can you use that others can't? So do you have access, based on your personal board of directors, do you have access to, a banker that you can use that knowledge and that service with that banker or so forth? So think about different things like that. What do people in your market see as your strengths? What are you always known for? In my direct sales business, a lot of people know me for always having a lot of energy and being ready to get you all hype and excited and supportive. That's what I'm known for. That's my brand. I'm always smiling. I'm always way over the top excited. It could be a little bit too much. But anytime that I'm not like that, then they know that something's wrong or something's not right. So I always say I'm the number one encourager. I'm the number one cheerleader. That's part of my brand. That's part of what I'm known for. All right. So let's go on into weaknesses. So, again, we're looking at areas of internal areas. So we're looking at, number one, I don't like the word weakness. I always say I like challenges. So what are your challenges? What are areas that you can improve in? I need to improve with learning how to say no and ending no with a period. So I'm not overwhelming myself, taking on too much responsibility. What are things that you should avoid? What are factors for you to avoid? And then what are others? What are others that do the exact same thing as you? What are they likely to see as weaknesses for themselves as well as for you? What's a weakness? My direct sales company, a weakness could possibly be not having access to product. Not having access to the best product. So kind of think about that. Just look at it and say, what are people in your same industry, in your same market, what are they likely to see as a weakness? Think about it. If you have a service-based business, a weakness could be how quickly you see, your clientele, how clean your office space is, how your appointments are. Are you late? Do you always run behind? So think about different things and what weaknesses. All right? And then what factors make you lose the deal? So if you have a product, what happens to make you lose a sale? If you have a service-based business, what happens to make you schedule less appointments? So what is impacting, what can have a negative impact on your financial picture? Even in your career, what can happen to make you not get the job? Because that's a negative impact on your financial situation. All right, so now let's start looking at the external factors of the SWOT analysis. So the first of the external factors is the opportunities. And so when you think about expansion, you know what your strengths are, you know what your weaknesses are. When you're thinking about expansion, when you're thinking about making that power move, the first thing is what are immediate opportunities that you can identify. I call that the low-hanging fruit opportunity. So if you sell a product and you notice that your product sells very well with women between the ages of 50 and 65, what are some of those opportunities? Where can I identify women between the ages of 50 and 65? Because that's going to be an opportunity for my growth, an opportunity for my expansion. Because I've done the work. I know that where I'm strong, I know where my challenges are. So what's my opportunity for expansion? What are some trends that you are aware of? One of the things I learned is that if you're in network marketing, if you're in direct sales and you don't have specific things published on the worldwide internet showing yourself as an authority, you're missing out. Because that's the trend. You need to be establishing yourself as an authority and an expert in your field. What happens when you Googleable? Google your company. Google your competitors. See what's going on to come out and say, what are some interesting trends? Subscribe to business magazines. Subscribe to career magazines. Listen to various personal development podcasts and different YouTube channels and so forth. Subscribe to various magazines, whether it's the digital version or if you're old school like me, you need the hard version. But, looking at some of the trends. All right? So then let's go to wrap it up where we talk about the threats. So the threats, again, are external. And whenever I think of threats, I always the first thing I write down when I'm thinking of threats is what can happen that I have absolutely no control over? What can happen? So I used earlier in tonight's broadcast about the partial federal government shutdown here in the United States that happened shortly after the Christmas time frame. You had absolutely no control over that. That could have happened, and that can impact you. But if you're doing a SWOT analysis for your personal life and you're looking at what impacts your bottom line, I truly encourage anyone that relies solely on your federal government employment paycheck to be looking at other ways that you have income generating, because that was a rude awakening. That was an aha moment about you have to set yourself up for success, because your paycheck is at the mercy of others and at the mercy of others that may not necessarily completely understand the situation. All right? So that's the first thing. What is it that I don't have any control over? So as you are identifying that is, what are the obstacles that you face? All right, well, I don't have startup capital. I have this great business idea. I don't have startup capital for it, or I have enough money, but if I run out, if I operate in the red too long and I run out of money, then everything that I worked hard to sell, to save is just gone. So what are some of those threats? And I always like to make my threats scary, because I feel like if I can overcome and I can identify what scares me the most and come up with strategies to be able to deal with that, that makes me that much more successful. All right? Look at what your competitors are doing. If you're in network marketing and you're direct sales, the best form of learning in the business is to go and see what others in similar industries are doing to you and other companies. Doing for their businesses with other companies. How are they using social media? How are they using in-person strategies? How are they set up if they have a product and they're at a vendor event? Looking at all of those, what are others doing? Because they may be on to something that you're not aware of, and it's really, they're killing it, killing it in a good way, using that slang. But they are doing a wonderful job impacting the increase in their financial situation and increase in their bottom line. All right? Are there any, we talked a lot about service industries. Are there any additional certifications or requirements or changes that are in the pipeline or happening? That's why it's so important to get plugged in. Get plugged into your industry organizations if you're doing this for a business. Get plugged into various personal development organizations, if you're doing this for your own personal development. We have a lot of changes in the tax law. How does that impact you? Are there some expenses that we were once able to deduct in our U.S. federal income tax that are no longer deductible? But how would you know that if you weren't plugged into some of the industry experts? Do you have bad debt and cash flow problems? That's a threat. We talked about that. We talked about if I do this and I have all of this money here and I lose it all because I'm still operating in the red, what does that do to me? So that's a threat. So write that out. Think about that, because we're going to talk about setting up your financials, which is a difficult conversation for me to have. I'm probably going to bring in an expert to interview with that one. But, looking at that, what's that cash flow like? And then reviewing your weaknesses. And this is where the internal meets the external. Look at your weaknesses and then be realistic with yourself. You have to be honest. You have to be ready to take that hard swallow and say, this is what can happen. But could any of your weaknesses seriously threaten your business? So let me tell you guys, I have, a 9-to-5, my career. I have a direct sales network marketing business that is amazing and awesome and continuing to grow and is in its height. I have the Chronicles of Doing Too Much. I also have great friendships. I have great relationships. I have, I have the problem to say no. I'm in a sorority, which I haven't been able to show up. I've been just a financial contributor to my sorority work lately, but I have all of these things lined up on my plate. And if sometimes I'm juggling so much, sometimes if one thing falls behind, then it can knock everything out of order. So, for example, I talked about my network marketing company. I sell product on social media on Tuesday nights. I sold my product Tuesday night. Thursdays is when I send out invoices. Well, it just so happened that I sold product on a Tuesday. On that Thursday was time for me to charge my customers their invoices. It just so happened that Thursday was the last day of the month, and my team, which is another aspect of my network marketing direct sales business, was on fire because we were at the cusp of advancing in rank. We were at the cusp of going into the top 25% of the company. So I had to take my attention away from doing customer invoices to focus on the team to provide them with their needs. Well, needless to say, that put a monkey wrench into my schedule, and I was a week late getting invoices out. That weakness, because my schedule is so tight, that weakness could have pretty much ended my business. So I use that as an example because that's a threat. And that's when you have to say, this threat, this weakness, sometimes your strategy to overcome that weakness is knowing when to get help, because invoicing customers is something that can outsource to someone. So hopefully tonight's episode was very informative, that I challenge everyone to go out and start to prepare the SWOT analysis for whatever it is that you have in life, and be what you have going on in life, and be honest with yourself. Be true to yourself. Do a good and proper assessment. You don't have to share this with anyone, of your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. But let me tell you, even though you're not sharing it with anyone, I want you to use it for yourself, because that's going to help you to live the best life possible. So thank you so much. I truly appreciate all of you guys joining me live tonight for this episode of the Chronicles of Doing Too Much, and I will talk to you next week. Have a fantastic rest of the week. Good night.
Thank you for tuning in. Remember, you define your own success. Believe you can do it, build a solid foundation, know your circle, and soar. Until next time.